Well, the Ark of the Covenant is fascinating because it's the most important ritual object that Judaism has ever had.
Hidden beneath the rugged hills of Judea, a small team of researchers followed a trail of clues preserved in an ancient manuscript that few scholars had ever fully deciphered. What they found on their ground-penetrating radar stopped the investigation cold, a sealed chamber buried nearly 30 feet beneath the earth. When they finally examined what lay inside, the discovery appeared to match a description written more than 3,000 years ago with astonishing precision. Measurements, materials, and even specific details seemed to align with the ancient account. For a brief moment, it looked as though one of history's greatest mysteries had finally been solved. But what happened next turned the discovery into one of the most controversial claims ever made. Critics dismissed it, experts challenged it, and questions emerged that remain unanswered to this day. Was this the find that could rewrite biblical archaeology, or a story too extraordinary to be believed?
The Ark is first introduced scripturally in the book of Exodus, where God gives Moses instructions to build an ark for carrying the Ten Commandments.
The discovery. The team had been working from a manuscript that had circulated through academic circles for years without attracting serious excavation interest. The document was ancient, written in a form of Hebrew that scholars dated to the Second Temple period, and it described the location of a hidden chamber in the Judean hills using astronomical and geographical markers that the researchers had spent months comparing with modern survey data. Most scholars who studied the manuscript viewed it as symbolic, the kind of text that conveys spiritual truths through descriptions of physical places. The team that chose to take it literally found a chamber. Ground-penetrating radar revealed the space clearly at roughly 30 feet beneath the surface. The structure appeared consistent and the floor looked level, suggesting a man-made construction rather than a natural cavity. When the team opened an access point and lowered cameras inside, what appeared on the screens brought the excavation to a halt for 2 days while everyone tried to understand what they were seeing. A chest covered in gold. Its dimensions matched the biblical description in Exodus within inches. A lid. 2 figures positioned on top, facing one another, their wings stretched inward over the surface. The biblical text describes the Ark of the Covenant's lid as the mercy seat. According to some scholars, such an artifact could have existed. The Ark of the Covenant, with 2 cherubim whose wings extended toward each other above it. The description was exact. The images from the cameras were exact. The resemblance between the two was far closer than anyone involved had expected when the excavation began. Around the chest, scattered across the chamber floor, were bones. Scorch marks covered the walls in patterns radiating outward from the chest's position. The bones were ancient. Not recent, but their placement did not suggest a peaceful burial. And when the team sent people down for a closer look, the cameras failed. Not in the ordinary way electronics sometimes fail underground. They stopped working entirely. Screens went black at nearly the same distance from the chest, regardless of which equipment was used. Backup devices were brought in. They failed as well. What scientists discovered after being called to examine the site proved almost as difficult to explain as the images themselves. X-ray equipment used to inspect the chest without direct contact failed to produce usable results. The materials making up the chest, analyzed remotely through spectral testing, did not match any known wood species for the interior structure or any identified alloy for the gold covering. Based on visible characteristics and the limited testing that could be performed without touching it, the wood most closely resembled acacia, exactly as described in the biblical text. Yet the detailed analysis needed to confirm that conclusion could never be completed because the instruments repeatedly stopped functioning. The electromagnetic field surrounding the object became the most puzzling finding for the scientific team. Highly sensitive equipment detected a rhythmic pulse originating from the chest, a steady fluctuation in the electromagnetic field that did not match any natural source researchers could identify. The pulse was not fixed. It changed according to a pattern that instruments recorded before they, too, failed. And the small portion of data that survived did not resemble any known natural or man-made electromagnetic signature. The effects on the people who spent the most time near the chamber were carefully documented by team members who remained at a safer distance. Researchers who stayed inside for extended periods reported unusually vivid and unsettling dreams during the nights that followed. Several experienced nosebleeds that began during or shortly after visits to the chamber. 2 reported temporary vision disturbances that eventually disappeared within days, but were severe enough to disrupt normal daily activities while they lasted. Every incident was recorded. The team also noted that these symptoms closely mirrored descriptions found in biblical accounts involving people who approached the Ark without proper preparation.
If the Ark of the Covenant had been brought to Rome, unique object, which remember was supposed to have awesome power, apart from the fact that it was beautiful to look at and that God was supposed to live within those 2 cherubim on the top.
The cover-up. Within 72 hours of the scientific team's first complete examination of the chamber, military vehicles arrived at the site without any warning. There had been no advance notice, no coordination with the expedition leaders, and no request for the team's preliminary findings. The convoy appeared shortly after dawn, when visibility was still limited and the desert air carried a cold metallic dryness that caused sounds to travel farther than usual. Soldiers quickly established a secure perimeter, placing barriers around the excavation entrance and sealing every route leading into the dig site. Communication systems were installed on elevated ground, and civilian personnel were ordered to remain beyond a newly established boundary. The scientific team, still dressed in field gear and wearing dust-covered gloves from their morning work, was kept outside the perimeter and denied any further access. From a distance, they watched specialized equipment being unloaded from reinforced transport vehicles. Among the cargo was a lead-lined containment unit, unusually large and clearly built for high-risk transportation. Team members observed that the equipment did not appear improvised, but carefully selected for a specific objective, suggesting that whatever was about to be removed had been anticipated long before the team's official report could have passed through normal administrative channels. Under strict supervision, the chest recovered from the chamber was carefully lifted and placed inside the lead-lined container. The operation was carried out with almost no spoken communication, relying instead on hand signals and pre-assigned responsibilities. Once secured, the container was sealed and escorted away by armed personnel. Immediately afterward, the scientific team was separated. Each member was transported individually to an undisclosed, secure location. During the days that followed, they underwent structured questioning sessions. The questions remained consistent for every individual: who had been informed about the excavation before the discovery, what information had been shared outside the team, and whether any digital files, field notes, or communications had been copied or transmitted elsewhere. After the interviews, every team member was presented with a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. The document was extensive and unusually broad, covering every aspect of the excavation, the chamber, the chest, and all observations, whether recorded or remembered. The wording extended beyond direct disclosure, specifically including indirect references, symbolic descriptions, and any future academic interpretation that could reasonably be linked to the findings. Every member of the team signed. One member did not stay silent. Daniel Knox, a technician responsible for monitoring electromagnetic fluctuations during the excavation, uploaded a video online approximately 3 weeks after signing the agreement. The recording was brief and intentionally structured. Knox appeared calm, speaking in a controlled manner while avoiding any identifiable references to exact coordinates or institutional affiliations. He described unusual equipment failures, a powerful electromagnetic disturbance detected near the chamber entrance, and the existence of a sealed chest that closely matched descriptions found in ancient biblical texts. In the video, Knox openly acknowledged that he was violating a legally binding agreement. He stated that, in his opinion, the potential significance of the discovery for the public outweighed the personal and legal consequences he was choosing to face. He also claimed he was recording and uploading the message from a location that he had disclosed to no one. The video remained online for roughly 6 hours before disappearing from every platform where it had been uploaded. Soon afterward, Knox's phone stopped receiving calls and routed directly to voicemail. When colleagues and acquaintances visited his apartment, they found it empty, with no signs of forced entry or any indication of a struggle. According to the last available reports, Daniel Knox has never been seen or heard from again. The manuscript and the Temple Mount. The manuscript that guided the team before the excavation did not describe a single location, but a network of sites arranged in a deliberate sequence. The chamber in the Judean hills, where the chest was eventually recovered, was presented in the text as only the first confirmed location. It was described less as a final destination and more as a starting point, an initial repository intended to verify the accuracy of the manuscript's internal mapping system. The second location referenced in the document was considerably more sensitive and far more difficult to investigate. According to the text, it was located beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, widely regarded as the most politically and religiously contested archaeological site in the world. Direct excavation in the area has remained effectively impossible for decades because of overlapping religious authority, international diplomatic pressure, and the presence of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock directly above the underground zones of interest. Before his disappearance, Daniel Knox reportedly managed to decode a section of the manuscript that referred directly to this second site. He shared his translated notes with a journalist named David Lewin, who kept copies of the material. In those notes, Knox outlined a proposed chamber beneath the Temple Mount and attempted to match its described position with previously collected subsurface survey data from the area. That data came from a limited and largely unacknowledged scanning project carried out years earlier by a small research team with access to underground imaging technology. According to Knox's reconstruction, those scans revealed an unusual underground anomaly, a concentrated zone of magnetic radiation that did not match any known geological formation, fault line, or mineral deposit. Its structure appeared remarkably organized, as if the field itself had been shaped or contained rather than formed naturally. The anomaly's coordinates aligned closely with the manuscript's description of where a second object was believed to rest. The scanning project was never formally published or subjected to peer review. The team responsible for it disbanded shortly after completing their fieldwork, and the raw data was never placed in any public or institutional archive. As a result, Knox's notes remain among the only surviving references to the findings, and there is no independent way to verify or challenge their interpretation without access to the original data. What can be confirmed, however, is more limited, though still significant within the broader context. The location described in the manuscript corresponds to a subsurface zone beneath the Temple Mount that has been restricted from archaeological investigation since the 1970s. During that time, a survey team reportedly identified previously undocumented tunnel systems while conducting limited underground work under controlled conditions. Soon after the discovery, access to the area was abruptly revoked by Israeli authorities, and all future excavation requests were denied without public explanation. Since then, the region has remained effectively closed to systematic scientific investigation, existing in a continuing state of controlled inaccessibility where historical research, political sensitivity, and religious authority intersect in ways that prevent verification, yet do little to stop speculation about what may lie beneath. One of our trusted sources told us that an ancient and mysterious tunnel runs nearly 40 feet beneath the old city of Jerusalem. The historical trails. The search for the Ark of the Covenant has produced several competing theories across different research traditions, and each contains enough supporting evidence to be taken seriously while leaving enough unanswered questions to keep the mystery alive. In a European museum, a metal plate that had long been cataloged as a decorative Roman-era artifact was later re-examined by an independent researcher and identified as a map. The map appeared to show a network of sealed tunnels beneath Jerusalem, marked with specific distances and directions from recognizable surface landmarks. The research was published in a small academic journal. Shortly afterward, the museum transferred the plate to an off-site storage facility. 6 months later, the researcher who published the analysis lost her academic position over what the institution described as unrelated reasons. The Ethiopian tradition remains the longest-standing and most institutionally supported of all competing claims. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church maintains that the Ark of the Covenant was brought to Ethiopia by Menelik, the son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, following a visit he made to Jerusalem as a young man. According to tradition, the Ark has remained ever since in a chapel beside the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Axum, Ethiopia. The chapel is guarded by a single monk who alone is permitted to enter, chosen for life and replaced only upon death. The guardian never leaves the chapel grounds. Whenever journalists and researchers have requested to see what is inside, the response has always been the same. The Ark is there. It cannot be shown. And the conversation ends there. No one who has entered the chapel in modern times has emerged to describe what lies within. The Ethiopian Church has maintained this position through political upheavals, invasions, and every change of government the country has experienced for more than 2,000 years. A document recovered from a British wartime archive describes a mission conducted in the early 1940s by a small Allied team sent to investigate reports of unusual activity in the Sinai Peninsula. The mission report, written by an archaeologist attached to the expedition named Dr. Emery Foster, was classified upon its return and has never been officially declassified. A partial photocopy of the report continues to circulate within research circles. The readable sections describe Foster examining a sealed underground chamber in Sinai and concluding that it had once stored an object matching the biblical description of the Ark. The chamber, Foster wrote, was empty. He included observations regarding the age of its construction and noted evidence suggesting the object had been moved relatively recently by archaeological standards. Foster's published academic work after the war never mentioned the Sinai mission. He died in 1961. His personal papers were donated to a university archive, cataloged and preserved. Among the listed materials was a sealed folder labeled Sinai 1968, a date appearing 27 years after the mission and 7 years after Foster's death, making its existence difficult to explain unless someone else added it to the collection later. A journalist named David Lewin, following leads connected to the Knox material, discovered the reference to the Sinai 1968 folder in the archive inventory and requested access. He was informed that the folder had been removed from the collection for conservation purposes. When he asked when it would be returned and available for examination, archive staff told him the conservation process had no defined completion date. According to the inventory description before its removal, the folder contained a single Polaroid photograph labeled Sinai 1968. Ron Wyatt's claim. In 1982, a man named Ron Wyatt made a claim that both the religious and archaeological communities have spent more than 40 years trying to understand and classify. Wyatt was not a professional archaeologist. He was a nurse with a strong interest in biblical archaeology who spent years conducting independent excavations at locations connected to the Old and New Testaments. In 1982, while working in tunnels beneath Jerusalem near the traditional site of the crucifixion, he reported discovering a chamber. Inside that chamber, he claimed, was the Ark of the Covenant. Wyatt's account contains details that are both fascinating and impossible to independently verify. He described crucifixion post holes carved into the rock above the chamber, holes matching the dimensions used for Roman execution posts. He also described a crack running through the bedrock from the surface down into the roof of the chamber, a fracture consistent with seismic activity and with descriptions found in the gospel accounts of events occurring at the moment of the crucifixion. Through this crack, Wyatt claimed a dark substance had dripped onto the lid of the ark, onto what the Bible calls the mercy seat, where the high priest would sprinkle blood during the Day of Atonement ceremony. Wyatt stated that laboratory testing identified the substance as dried blood. He further claimed the blood contained only 23 chromosomes, which he interpreted as evidence of a being without a human father. He took photographs. The photographs never developed properly. He recorded video footage. When reviewed, the video revealed nothing useful. He claimed that during his time inside the chamber, he encountered 4 beings he identified as angels. According to Wyatt, they told him that the Ark would not be revealed to the public until a future time chosen by divine authority. The reaction from the archaeological community was immediate and absolute rejection. Professional archaeologists pointed out that Wyatt lacked formal credentials, had no site documentation that met accepted standards, offered no reproducible evidence, and had no witnesses to the discovery itself. Even his own church, the Seventh-day Adventist denomination, officially distanced itself from his claims. Scientists who examined his account highlighted methodological flaws in nearly every specific assertion he made. Yet Wyatt's story refuses to disappear. The details he described, the crucifixion post holes, the fracture in the bedrock, the substance on the mercy seat, are either part of an elaborate fabrication or a description of something that connects the site of the crucifixion to the location of the ark in a way the biblical text seems to anticipate. The mercy seat was where blood was sprinkled during the Day of Atonement ritual as an act of atonement for the sins of the nation. If the crucifixion took place directly above the ark, then blood passing through the crack and onto the mercy seat would represent the very event that the temple rituals had symbolically pointed toward for centuries. Whether Wyatt discovered something genuine or created a detailed and sincere misunderstanding remains unresolved. What is clear is that his account fits a theological pattern with such precision that the alignment itself deserves consideration. The White Prophecy. In 1901, a religious author named Ellen G. Wyatt, one of the founders of the Seventh-day Adventist movement, published a statement concerning the Ark of the Covenant. She wrote that at a specific future moment chosen by divine providence, the Ark would emerge from its place of concealment and be revealed to the world. She described it as an event that would occur when humanity was prepared to receive what it would disclose. Wyatt interpreted this statement as confirmation of his discovery. If the ark was real, if it had been found, and if the angels he claimed to encounter told him it would remain hidden until the appointed time, then the failure of his photographs and the uselessness of his video recordings fit perfectly within the pattern Wyatt had described. The discovery was genuine. The revelation had not yet been allowed. The same church that produced Wyatt's writings formally rejected Wyatt's claims. The theological symmetry between the prophecy and the alleged discovery was not enough to overcome the lack of evidence supporting the claim. The denomination's official position was that Wyatt's account was sincere but mistaken, and that whatever he found or believed he found in those tunnels, it was not the ark. Wyatt's statement remains part of the church's historical record. The divinely chosen moment she described has never been specifically identified. The ark, if it exists somewhere in a recoverable form, has still not been presented to the world. Whether the sequence of events she described is unfolding through current developments or whether her words were symbolic rather than predictive remains a question the available evidence cannot answer either way. The ark was covered by a gold lid known as the mercy seat. It is also referred to as the throne of God, largely because of a passage in 1 Samuel 4:4, which describes God as being enthroned between the cherubim. What the Ark was. The biblical description of the Ark of the Covenant is detailed enough to create a precise blueprint. A chest approximately 4 feet long and 2.5 feet wide and deep, made from acacia wood and covered inside and outside with pure gold. It featured a solid gold lid called the mercy seat, with 2 cherubim made of hammered gold positioned at either end facing one another, their wings extended toward each other above it. 4 gold rings were attached near the base, 2 on each side, through which carrying poles made of gold-covered acacia wood were permanently inserted. The poles remained in place because the ark was never meant to rest directly on the ground, and anyone who touched it could be struck dead. Inside the chest were 3 sacred objects: the tablets of the covenant, the stone tablets on which the 10 Commandments were written at Sinai, a jar of manna, the substance that sustained Israel throughout 40 years in the wilderness, and Aaron's rod, the staff of the first high priest that miraculously budded overnight as confirmation of his priestly calling. The ark served as the centerpiece of the tabernacle and later of the temple. It was kept within the innermost chamber, the Holy of Holies, behind a heavy curtain that no one except the high priest was permitted to enter, and even then only once each year on the Day of Atonement. The cloud representing the divine presence was said to rest between the cherubim above the mercy seat. The ark marked the meeting point between the divine and the human, and the rules surrounding it were so strict that even accidental contact, as described in the biblical account of Uzzah, resulted in immediate death. After the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem in 586 BCE and the destruction of the First Temple, the ark disappears from the historical record. It is not mentioned among the treasures taken to Babylon. It does not appear on the lists of sacred items returned when the exiles came back. It simply vanishes from the narrative. Theories regarding its fate have generated an entire body of literature. Hidden beneath the Temple Mount before the Babylonian army arrived, carried to Mount Nebo by Jeremiah, transported to Ethiopia by Menelik, taken to Rome, brought to Ireland by the prophet's daughter, or buried somewhere in the Judean wilderness. Every theory presents supporting evidence, and every theory contains unresolved gaps. The one point on which nearly all serious researchers agree is that the ark went somewhere. It was too important and too carefully protected to have simply been destroyed or lost without leaving any record. Something that stood at the center of a nation's religious life for centuries does not simply disappear without someone knowing where it ended up.